Here's a fact that will make every founder uncomfortable. 72% of startups fail not because they build the wrong product, but because they fall in love with the right idea at the wrong time for the wrong market at the wrong price. The culprit, it's called the availability heuristics. And right now it's making you optimize for the loudest 5% of your customers while ignoring the silent 95% who are quietly churning. The founders who win aren't the ones with the best instincts, they're the ones who've built systems to outsmart their own brains. I noticed something on LinkedIn. I kind of found myself responding to founders that are talking about the struggles and challenges they have with, it's really simple, just speak to your customers. And then I took a moment to kind of reflect on myself, and I thought, you know what? That really actually isn't the most helpful advice, because everyone we speak to is already speaking to their customers and users. So I was thinking, like, what, this crazy figure of like 9 out of 10 startups that fail in the first like 1 to 3 years, like what if everyone's speaking to their customers and users, what on earth is actually going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, all of our clients, when they come to us, they first say to us, they all speak to clients, their clients, right? Or their users. But after working with us, after like this 5 to 6 weeks, they tell us that now they understand what we were saying at the beginning, that you can get any answer you want if you ask leading questions and then convince yourself you're going into the right direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I ended up going down a little bit of a rabbit hole because I was thinking how do you like articulate what the challenges are around this? So I start, we've mentioned this in some of our previous episodes, like some of the kind of biases, but I was thinking, okay, what are they and how vast are they? Wow, there is a lot of biases. And so I went down this rabbit hole. I found tons. I think
before you get into it,
okay,
what are biases? Because I think everybody knows the word bias, but what are they? Are they sort of your subconscious beliefs, sort of views and things, but you don't realize you have them, right? Because that's the thing you want to say. You don't realize you have them.
Yeah, well, I've got a bit of an overview of that.
Right, okay. So I'm jumping the ship.
You're jumping ahead, yeah.
Okay, fine.
We'll get to that.
Fine.
Well, so I was just going to sort of like set it up and say that I actually found loads of them. There was like maybe 40 odd, and I'm sure that's probably not all of them, but they each kind of fitted into like a little different kind of category. So I've come up with an idea of a like series of episodes because it would just be too much to get into one. And I've got like 6 spec'd out. So there's some on like our core cognitive bias, some around like social group biases, there's some specific interview challenges, we've got stuff on memory perception, and then like some shocking kind of statistics like the focused on kind of entrepreneurs. And I thought, as a 6th session, I will also dig into the Enneagram map. That's something that we also mentioned like before, which Brian Chesky from the Airbnb founder has mentioned, kind of has used it within his core founder team, as has the Bumble founder Whitney Wolf Herd.
But why do you think this is important, this Enneagram and the biases?
So that's something that we've like spent a lot of time investigating and learning ourselves, and I think that is another kind of like dimension to these biases, because the biases are like a psychological thing we all suffer with and are a little bit blind to, but then this map of kind of personalities is there's like 9 particular ways of being within the world, and each of those has its own kind of focus of attention. So that's another like dimension worth kind of drilling into. So we'll look at that and think about, okay, the 9 different things, like focuses that we'll just naturally do and we might not even like be aware to. Okay, so every day your brain makes approximately 35,000 decisions using mental shortcuts called cognitive biases, and most of them are sabotaging your startup. Confirmation bias makes you fall in love with ideas that should be killed. Anchoring bias locks you into pricing strategies that leave millions on the table. The availability heuristics convinces you that the loudest customer complaints represent your entire user base. And the founders of Spotify, Slack, and Zoom didn't succeed because they trusted their instincts. They succeeded because they learned to systematically distrust them. So for tech owners and founders, these aren't like abstract psychological concepts. They're the invisible forces that make you build features nobody wants, ignore market signals that could save your company, and double down on failing strategies because they feel right. Understanding these core cognitive biases isn't an academic luxury. It's actually a survival training mechanism for entrepreneurs who refuse to let their own minds become the biggest competitive disadvantage.
Wow, okay, it's a lot to unpack there, obviously. Essentially, we're saying that your brain is your biggest enemy. And anyone who's running business should think about the systems that actually could help them detach their own brain from the process of decision making.
Yeah, I think we can kind of go around lives being a quite self-unaware. And they can have an impact. So understanding and having sights of these things could really sort of help you overcome that.
Yeah, because you are going to be making decisions based on those biases.
Yeah,
right?
whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So loving that. And I wanted to start with let's talk about those kind of different types of biases, right? That can actually impact your business specifically. Obviously, they will be impacting your personal life, but because we're working with startups and tech businesses, we can see those things playing out over and over again. And I guess even now, when we started with our updated kind of coaching course that we do with the clients, we actually start by talking about those biases so they are aware of them before we go into fixing the product, right? And one of the sort of the most popular, I would say, bias that we've seen with our clients is confirmation bias, right? So it's when our brain sees only information that confirms our already existing view on things, right? So why is it important? Because when we work with our clients and they run interviews with their customers or the users or potential prospects, they only focus on the information that they hear that supports their ideas, which is very dangerous because then we can completely ignore all other information, which could be much more valuable, right?
Yeah. Yes. See this a lot. And it's very interesting. Well, because often founders will share their thinking before, and then it's so interesting to kind of to be someone on the outside of the business looking in and see all of the stuff that's just not been noticed.
Yeah, and even after we worked with them and we have very clear analysis of the product market fit and what needs to be kind of readjust and fixed in their product, it's this bias is so powerful that they still are very blind to 90% of all other information that is provided, right? We've seen that over and over. Mm-hmm. So to be aware of that is very important. And we have great stats from Harvard's Business Review saying that 67% of startup founders only seek information that validates their existing beliefs about their market, ignoring contradictory data. And that's exactly what we see over and over again. So it's really important to have maybe sometimes awareness of that, maybe somebody from outside to kind of redirect you a little bit, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, second one up is anchoring bias. So this is say the first price, feature, metric you encounter becomes the reference point that distorts every subsequent kind of business decision you make. So you kind of fixed around this one piece of information that has kind of caught your attention, and then everything else kind of hangs off the back of that.
Right. So how would you think it would work for the founders?
It's a good question.
Is it like when they see the piece of information, they could even see a piece of information about the competitor and they can get so hung on this, right? So they see, oh, the metric is this, or the conversion is this, or the churn is this, or they charge this much. So they kind of like see it as their referencing point for everything.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that now with AI, right? That in terms of an anchoring feature.
Nothing else exists. Yeah.
It's like our tech it's AI without really understanding what that is doing, and you see it kind of pop up in like almost every app I'm using, particularly some of the health applications I'm using, and I'm kind of like, what is it doing? Like, what's the value here?
So I've seen this with this sleeping app that I've been using. I think it's called either Cycle or Circle. I don't remember. This is basically about waking you up when you're finished your sleep cycle and you're supposed to feel much better, which is true. You do feel better if you wake up at the end of the cycle. But they have this AI analysis of your sleep. And it's really cool when you read it first time. They compare you to like your peers or people like in your area who sleep, like how they sleep. And stuff like that. But after a while, it becomes just the same thing. So after like 3-4 nights, it's the same kind of information. So I don't feel there's any intelligence in there. It's just saying the same kind of thing. So it doesn't really add any information for me. And like we often say, the AI likes the context. So it actually can't give you any insights of what else you can do with yourself apart from, telling me, oh, make sure you switch off the blue light or your room is cold. But it's not like AI really, right? It's like sort of like something you can read online really, right? But you would want AI to be smart enough to be able to somehow work out what is going on. And I remember you mentioned the same thing about your Aura ring, that you had some AI analysis that were not super like informative.
Yeah, again, it's sort of lacking the context. Well, I mean, I don't know what. Yeah, it was just sort of like helping with the average stats, and not too tailored to my experience and the results that I was getting. It was just another way of serving the kind of like how-to conversations. But on that anchoring bias, there's a really interesting fact from the Journal of Financial Economics. The first valuation number mentioned in a funding negotiation influenced the final deal price by an average of 41%, regardless of the company metrics. Mm-hmm. That's a good way of using that as a founder to your advantage.
Interesting.
I guess each of these has a positive and a negative. It's just if you have awareness of it, you can use it to benefit you.
Well, I know anchoring price is like a very old trick, right? To like sell something at the higher price, show something at the higher price as an option, and then the other option that's not as high. Well, it's not going to feel so high anymore if you have the first price very, very high.
Yeah. Sales technique.
So you can use that in your for your benefit. So availability heuristic means the bias where you judge your market size and user behavior based on whatever examples come to mind most easily. So usually the most recent, dramatic or memorable cases that don't represent the reality. So whatever is the most available becomes our reality and whatever, and then we just kind of believe in this, right? Which is really, really interesting. Like I've seen it in a couple of companies actually. Remember when we speak always to our clients about accessibility and about like 2 billion people in the world having problems with eyesight, but because majority of people who build tech might not have access to those people who have problems with eyesight, they kind of like possibly ignore them and design platforms and applications maybe not necessarily covering those people.
I mean, there's that. The designers particularly can kind of fall into that trap of following nice styling, and so going for the light greys, and because it like visually looks nice and can be appealing. But if you're struggling with eyesight challenges, is it like 50% of the American population have challenges with like
eyesight?
Really? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's like something super high like that. So if you've got like light greys in your platform, it can be really difficult for somebody with like visual impairments to actually see the differentiations around like a form field or a button. It's going to be a real challenge.
Hey guys, we're really hoping that you're enjoying this episode so far. And if you are, please like, subscribe, and follow. And if you really want to know more about who we are and what we do, go to buildinggreattech.com. Now let's go back to the episode. So on that, 84% of entrepreneurs overestimate market size based on the most recent success stories they hear, not comprehensive market analysis. That's from MIT. From 2022 research, which is quite interesting. I think there's also a lot of other things playing a role in overestimation that, because we obviously want to look better, motivate ourselves, look better for investors and stuff like that. But yeah, if this is based on like a recent story that you've heard, that could be impacting you, definitely. I mean, I definitely would be impacted by that. If somebody told me, oh yeah, the market you're targeting is twice the size that you thought, I'll be like, yeah, I'm taking that.
Yeah. And next up, recency bias. So it's like your latest customer complaint, newest feature request, or most recent user session feels more important than months of contradictory data. Like I've seen this a lot myself when I've been in businesses, and quite often it will come from kind of the sales team, because they're obviously chatting to clients and customers, prospects in day out, and I've seen it where the sales team can come and then push for features in a product and be kind of pushing what was their latest conversation that they had with a client. So then if like the product team are actually acting on that stuff, it can make the experience like a real mess with.
Yeah, well, if you also add to that, I've read somewhere recently that 50% of our memory is made up. If you mix that with that recency bias and making decisions about your product, like you don't remember your 3 conversations back.
Yeah.
Also, our brain changes those conversations and outcomes of those conversations. So you just kind of forget about that stuff that was said before, or even change that. And then you also like focus only on the last person you've spoken to. Then you have very sort of not consistent information to make a decision about your product, right?
Yeah, it can be really challenging. I think as you're like if you're like an early stage founder and you're like put something out, ship, and then you're having conversations, and it's kind of like one by one and not in such a systematic approach, which it is kind of good to do early stages, but you can then like inadvertently fall into that trap of hanging on to the last thing, the person you said that you spoke to last,
Yeah, well, the most majority of clients that we speak to, like majority of clients that we work with, they don't have any system of tracking, making records, or systematic analysis of the information they get. So they definitely probably will have the recency bias problem.
Yeah, and there's that quite cool fact from the Product Management Institute. 73% of product decisions are based on the last customer conversation, not comprehensive user feedback data.
Exactly. And we've seen that in any size of company, huge multi-billion companies all the way down to small startups.
Yeah, 100%. Primacy effect. First impressions from initial user testing, early customer feedback, or your product's launch reception carry disproportionate weight in all your future decisions. It's a really interesting one.
This is exactly what happened with my client recently. So we were supposed to run 5 sessions with the prospects.
Okay, interesting.
The first one he ran, he said he already has all of the information he needs. And
is this actually the same guy that said, oh, we've already asked all these questions?
No, that's a different one, actually.
Okay.
No, he's like, oh, I like this. I'm going to run with that. Why do we need another 4 sessions, right?
Yeah.
So
very interesting question, though, because
yeah.
sometimes you just have total curveballs and you won't know that until you've gone through, which is why it can be really sort of dangerous to jump on each bit of feedback as it comes in. You really need that kind of process.
Well, like when we run those things for our clients, or when they pay us to do these things for them, analysis, I'm the same. Like sometimes I will run first session. I'm like, I've got so much information. I don't need more information. And then I'm like, I'm going to do other 4 sessions. And then I always discovered something new that I didn't think about, and then start seeing patterns, right? That's why we always say you need to kind of run the same sessions to see patterns, not one person saying something. But it totally resonates with me what you just read.
That's good.
Makes sense.
So the first customer feedback founders receive shapes the product direction 3 times more than all subsequent feedback combined. That's a Stanford customer development survey.
Insane. That's really insane.
Isn't it?
It's insane stat, and I totally believe this 100% because I can see it in me. If I didn't know the process that we run with our clients, I'll be exactly the same. I'll be like, yeah, I know all the answers now.
It's like founders don't stand a chance with all these things, right?
Yeah, it's really hard. And on the top of that, you need to be running business, maybe managing the team, the investors. It's like crazy. And then survivorship bias is a very interesting one when it's focusing on studying successful companies, right? So if you're a founder or entrepreneur, you're looking at the successful companies that tried and implemented successfully some specific features.
That's where you want to be, right?
That's where you want to be.
Successful, so
and
it's got to be a result of those features, right?
Yeah, and that feature I want, while ignoring the thousands of failed attempts that tried the exact same features, right? So you could focus on 5 companies that successfully introduced those features, ignoring 100 companies that actually failed with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So 95% of entrepreneurship advice comes from the 3% of founders who succeeded. I think this is really, really interesting because we see that on LinkedIn all the time. You can see only the success stories and what they've done and how amazing it worked for them. So that's creating a completely distorted view of what actually works. And I think it's a great thing.
What are the figures of creators on LinkedIn to those kind of consuming content? It's massive.
It's a different. Yeah, it's a massive disproportion.
Yeah, I feel like it's something like.
But
3%.
also, I think a lot of people on LinkedIn and other places as well, they are perceived as very successful because they have a massive following. But actually, are they making any money? That's a completely different story, right?
Question.
But I love that. I really like that 95% of entrepreneurship advice comes from 3% of founders who succeeded. What about this other 97%?
Yeah,
who didn't succeed doing exactly the same thing?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Negativity bias. So bad reviews, user complaints, and critical feedback dominate your attention and decision making far more than positive signals and satisfied customers. That's one I'm a bit divided here because, to be honest with you, and we spoke about it many times, we love negative feedback. Right?
Oh yes, yeah.
We love negative feedback because we can learn so much from negative feedback. But I guess this is this bias is more like whatever happens is all negative, right? And it's kind of low energy approach, isn't it? So one negative customer review has the same psychological impact as 5 positive reviews on founders' decision making.
I can believe that.
You can.
Yeah, well, you take it personally, right?
Well, that's another thing. You can't take things personally, but you cannot not take them personally.
I think you've got to look at those things as gifts from the universe. They're like, yeah, I got this wrong. Okay, is there anything I can actually do about that? Is it just this one curveball that's having a really bad day and just thought they'd let rip on social media just to offload? Or is there a bit of a pattern in this negative feedback and there's something there to actually look into, right? Mm-hmm. And the flip side of that, you've got optimism bias. So this is where you consistently underestimate development timelines, user acquisition costs, and competitor threats while overestimating market demand and your kind of product's appeal. That's kind of an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, that's definitely something.
I see that more.
It's so weird because there is a feeling like you kind of to embark on that journey as a founder and an entrepreneur and like build tech, which is an epic journey in itself, like you do have to be a bit optimistic, like because it's the thing that kind of keeps you going, because if you're too negative, you can just dig yourself into a hole and like not want to kind of overcome the hurdle. So that can be like a good thing, but it's how do you kind of keep these things in check and have awareness
estimation is it's a difficult bit, right? And I remember Ray Dalio, that amazing hedge fund investor, he said always take whatever estimate you have and times it 1.5
or
times
2 even,
or 2 times,
yeah,
and then you will have pretty much probably good estimates. But he's very like a head person, like very sort of logical and so on.
I think he learned from his mistakes.
Oh yeah, from his mistakes, that's right. Yeah,
exactly. We've got a cool fact here. 87% of entrepreneurs believe their startup will succeed despite knowing that 90% of startups fail.
Oh dear. Okay, now next one is pessimism bias. I think it's similar to negativity bias.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what is how do those two things differ?
So pessimism bias is like when you underestimate your product all the time. So negativity bias was more around feedback. So you're like very low and impacted by negative feedback, which you shouldn't, because it actually can give you amazing information. But pessimism bias, and I know founders like this, and so they systematically underestimate the product's potential, dismiss positive user feedback, and assume the worst case scenario will always occur. I don't know how you can create anything with such a mindset. It's probably difficult. So after one setback, 68% of founders systematically underestimate future opportunities and overestimate risks. So just to be aware that when you have negative sort of event, you might fall into the trap of being sort of super pessimistic. And lastly, we have normacy bias, when you assume current user behavior, market condition, and business metrics will continue unchanged. Well, and then AI comes in, leaving you unprepared for inevitable shifts on the market and that could make or break your company. That's a really interesting one. I think we've worked on a couple of products when our companies were thinking everything is going to be the same kind of thing, but timing is everything.
Like later stage businesses that have been going have a kind of consistent user base retention, which is kind of, flatlined. And then I've been called in like when suddenly, startups have kind of come in like attacking their kind of market share, and then suddenly there might be some management change around, and then they want to focus on, okay, how do we improve our product offering and change what has been the normal for many years.
I worked with a huge company. They're like in financial sector, and I mentioned to them a couple of times they should definitely invest in newer technology. They should definitely look at competitors, and they said, oh no, our competitors do exactly as we do, right? And I said, well, you just need to remember that you're not competing only with your competitors, you're competing with the entire market. People have access to this all cool applications these days, so they will be using Airbnb, they will be using whatever other cool apps are out there, or Uber or whatever, and they will expect from you similar level of sort of delivery. And I have to tell you, like 7 years later, that company is not doing really well because you have so many modern competitors. You constantly need to sort of like stay on top of like what's the latest, what the expectation is, even if you're a very established player with multi-billion sort of a portfolio or whatever.
Yeah, the challenge there is like the risk aversion, right?
Yeah,
the financial institutions, and they're assessing risk all the time. So I guess when they have something working, it's a big challenge to like change.
But there's a beauty of testing, right? There's a beauty of testing. You have your core business, it's already working. Why not have like a small bit of it for testing, like new ideas, new approaches, and see with your clients if they like it or they don't. And that's make decisions based on that, rather than your hunch that everything will be forever this way, because we all know it's not gonna happen, because the only thing that is certain that is change.
Yeah.
And so interesting stat, 78% of successful companies were disrupted because leadership could not imagine their industry fundamentally changing.
So how do we overcome
Good
these
question.
things, right?
How do you do that? Can you overcome this? Because it's like subconscious.
Yeah, it's a good question. There are some strategies. We've got 5 strategies here to overcome these biases. Yeah, let's dig into them. So a pre-mortem analysis is kind of an interesting, right? So before any major decisions, imagine your product has failed and brainstorm why it happens.
Love that.
This is quite a cool idea. So Klain's study, Gary Klain's research, I think this is. So Klain's study shows this technique increases the ability to identify reasons for future outcomes by 30%. Unlike post-mortems that happen like after the failure, pre-mortems help teams overcome the optimism bias and consider overlooked risk before committing to resources. I quite like that. Instead of doing it after the fact and something's gone wrong, have a think about it before, heads up. It's a kind of interesting strategy.
Also, imagining that your business failed is a good practice anyway. I think the good exercise for anyone.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
It's not the visualization techniques we're used to.
Interesting strategy called consider the opposite, where we actively generate reasons why your belief might be wrong before making decisions. And I believe, again, going to Ray Dalio, I think he famously said that he loves discussing and arguing with people who think completely the opposite from him.
Yeah, no, he's got this great set up in the business. Is it called meritocracy? Is that right? Did he implement that as meritocracy
as the strategy of running the business?
Yes, so he did a ton of research on personalities and behavior. I'm pretty sure he had the Enneagram in there, although he hasn't actually openly said that, or I haven't seen any information for him to say that he had. But he had like kind of trump cards that everyone in the business, and then they put down kind of their skills and experience, and then that kind of gives them a like boost on what they have to offer. So depending on what the topic of conversation is, around those like more skilled in that topic have like a more powerful say in the final decision that's made. I was like, wow, that sounds like such an amazing idea. Imagine if everyone in business did that, because sometimes it can just be like a flat, everyone's opinion is of value, which it is, of course, but then if people are more skilled in a particular area, like for example, the design department in the product led, then they should have more of a say, I would say, around like the look and feel and how things are communicated over, say, the product team or the product owner, right? So because there's an understanding of that, and their sort of thinking should outweigh someone else.
But
right?
You have to be in a very mature environment where everybody, because I remember him saying in the book that I think we read of him, that he was saying that it was very difficult to implement to begin with, because people had to be okay with the weak side they have.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you need to say, okay, I'm not as good at this, but I'm very good at this. That's hard.
Yeah.
But then that's the only way. That's why it's like a transparency in your skills and your abilities. But going back to what he said, yes, he would always invite somebody on his sort of level, but with opposite opinion, and listen to why his opinion is incorrect. And the research shows that this simple technique significantly reduces confirmation biases by forcing you to seek disconforming evidence. Ask what would have to be true for this idea to fail, and genuinely try to answer it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting strategy, to genuinely try and answer that. I've had one of the leaders I worked with in one of the companies have that as a workshop strategy. So you come up with ideas, and then figure out, okay, if we put this forward, how might it fail and why would it fail? And it's really good exercise as a team. Really cool.
And then everybody's over that, right? Because you're kind of like always scared that things will fail, but if you air it and discuss it, it's almost not as scary.
100%. Okay, third one, we've got reference class forecasting. So instead of planning based on your unique situation, look at similar projects or companies and use their outcomes as your baseline prediction. That's quite good. Keep you on track. This technique, also called outside view, consistently produces more accurate forecasts than inside view planning, and directly counters optimism bias and the planning fallacy.
I think in theory this is good, but in practice it could be quite difficult, I would say, because companies don't want to share how things worked out or didn't work. It's quite practically, it would be quite difficult, I think, to implement. If you know businesses that are happy to share with you, maybe some inside information.
Yeah, this is true.
That is good, but otherwise I think it would be quite difficult.
Yeah.
And
you really put a bummer on that one.
Well, I just feel like this is, I'm just like thinking practically.
Okay.
And we worked in these businesses for many, many years. And, one thing they don't want to anybody to know is like what's going on inside.
Yes.
So,
or change, if anyway.
I mean, if you're in a startup business and let's say you are in a Y Combinator or some kind of accelerator, I think people are much more eager to share things with you and sort of what works, what doesn't work. So I think for smaller companies, it's doable.
Yeah.
So I fixed it.
That's very sensible.
I fixed it for you now.
Good shout.
Okay. Another thing you can do to prevent biases taking over is something called structured decision processes, right? So research
They really roll off the tongue, don't they? The
Seriously.
names of these strategies.
You're really testing me today. So research shows that following systematic decision frameworks, like explicitly listing assumptions, gathering diverse perspectives, and setting decision criteria up front, reduces multiple biases simultaneously. The key is the structure itself and not any specific framework. And I absolutely love it and agree with this. There's so many systems you can follow. You can collect stuff in Excel or whatever, Airtable, systematically what people are saying to you without rewording what they said, because that's also a problem when collecting feedback. But if you have things collected and systematically analyzed, there are so much higher chances that you're going to succeed in terms of direction and decision making.
Yeah, and another keyword there as well is diverse perspectives. So
that's hard.
The broader range of data that you're gathering in from different people there.
It's really hard because it's
better picture, more context.
For founders, it's what is it called? Not voice chamber. When they're just talking to each other.
Chamber.
Yeah, echo chamber.
Almost.
Echo chamber, when there's 2 or 3 founders and they're constantly talking to each other and making decisions between themselves.
Yeah.
It's hard. That's why you need a system and maybe some kind of external people to help you with that.
Yeah. Last up, incentive alignment for accuracy. This is a really interesting one, I think, particularly for when you get to a bigger business, right? Because I think companies might forget the contextual world of which their employees are working within, right? Because they're all on if they're lucky enough to be in a business that has a bonus structure, but then those bonuses are aligned in conflict for, say, the experience of the customer. That can be really jarring if you've got teams working on experience that aren't all aligned in the same thing.
So you're saying when you're getting bonuses for delivering something rather than bonus for achieving specific goal for a customer?
Yeah, well, it's a goal for you yourself.
My
inside
goal
the
would
business.
be just get a bonus.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless that is tightly aligned with the experience of the customer, has been thoroughly thought through, that can be really challenging. Studies demonstrate that when people are rewarded for accuracy rather than advocacy, bias effects diminish significantly, which creates systems where team members benefit from being right about outcomes, not from supporting popular ideas or maintaining harmony. This is one of the few interventions that show persistent bias reduction over time. It's kind of interesting.
That resonates with me a lot because we obviously both work with super small companies and huge corporations. and
everything in between.
And everything in between. But this resonates specifically, like you said, for bigger teams. I think what happens in bigger teams very often, where you have one person who is maybe ahead of the division or whatever, and they have an idea, then everybody jumps on that idea and support that idea, even if it's not a good idea.
Yeah, which is just an idea not necessarily founded in any kind of evidence-based
which
data.
Most of cases we worked with was the actual true.
Yeah, what's that cool fact about the amount of features made?
80%. 80% of all SaaS features are never or rarely used. That's by Pendo research.
Yeah, amazing. Love that one. And like an important caveat on all of this.
Okay, so we just said how to fix it, but now we're going to say there's a caveat to it.
Yeah, there's a caveat. There's always a caveat. Yeah. So the important caveat is most de-biasing research shows that awareness alone doesn't eliminate biases, and many techniques have temporary effects.
Oh dear.
So these 5 approaches have the strongest like empirical support for actually changing decision-making behavior.
The ones that we discussed.
The ones that we discussed, yeah. But the honest truth is that cognitive bias research shows most de-biasing techniques have limited effectiveness.
Awesome. So we just spent all this hour talking about it. Just like can't do anything about it.
We're raising awareness, right?
Yeah.
But some of the most proven approaches are actually awareness training. So we've just done that, right?
All right, cool.
Yeah, so having awareness of this helps, although the effects fade because you're obviously blind to it. Structured decision-making processes, like super important. This is really like, I think, one of the key things.
Structured
structured approach to what you're doing. Outside perspectives, like red team, so someone external. I think that's where, as a consultant, if you go into business, that's where you're able to actually get real change and results, because you have that, you're not like lost in it. Like one of the hardest things as a founder or business owner is to see things with clarity, like when it's your own thing. So having someone from the outside looking in can be a really strong.
Well, that's why a lot of founders and businesses want to work with us, because we come completely like fresh.
Yeah.
And
incentive alignment to like reward accuracy over optimism.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So that's our caveat. So just a quick kind of overview, like the brutal truth is your brain is evolved to survive in the wild and not actually like build billion-dollar businesses. That is annoying.
That's what you
said,
yeah.
How annoying. So every gut instinct is actually a cognitive shortcut designed for a world that no longer exists. The most dangerous phrase in business isn't "I don't know," it's "I'm sure."
Oh my God, all of the founders that we ever worked with or businesses, it was the most difficult to make significant change or improvement when they were sure what needs to be done. So I agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. And the bottom line, while you're trusting your instincts, your competitors are building systems that eliminate human judgment from critical decisions. So your biggest competitive disadvantage isn't your competition, it's your confidence in your own thinking.
Ooh, that hits hard. Yeah. Okay, here's your challenge for this week. Look at your current user feedback process and ask yourself, are you jumping at the latest request or complaint from your customers? Are you selecting features that you are mostly interested in building next? And do you even have a system of collecting feedback? Now think about it. What is the smallest step you can take towards having a system? So one of the things you can do this week is creating a table in either Excel or Airtable and start systematically collecting feedback from your users or prospects. And the important thing here is include all of the feedback, not only the things that you really like. Thanks so much for tuning in to Building Great Tech. If you know someone who is driving themselves crazy by unconscious biases, share this episode with them. You also can connect with us on LinkedIn and ask questions. We would love to answer them here. And you also can go to our website, buildinggreattech.com, where you can find tips and guides that will help you make your platform more customer focused and profitable. See you next time.